Good morning. This is Phil Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Hey, I'm just coming to you like I do daily, talking about this great American sport, baseball, and the African American side of the history. This is the part that was left out of books for generations. And so I'm just trying to make sure it comes back and doesn't get left out again, especially in this climate that we're living in now. It's more important than ever that I continue to talk about all of these outstanding men that you probably never heard of. You may not be thinking about them, but just know this that there were a lot of outstanding African American baseball players. And if you love baseball and you love baseball stories, you love the lore around the sport, this is a place you can come and get some of that information. So I'm not going to hesitate to bring you some more information. And I may even come back on with a second broadcast this afternoon, but this is going to be my morning broadcast because I, like a lot of other people, are kind of snowed in with cold weather here. I think we're about 1 degree. I think we're going to get up to 7 degrees here in Kansas City. So, all right, so let's go immediately to some things that happened. And guys, if you're new watching me, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That way you can catch me when I come on. I see already have Pastor Carmine. Thank you for joining this morning. I don't have anything from California, but I've got some interesting things that I think you may find, Pastor Carmine. So appreciate your follow. So here we go, guys. The first one is January 24th, 1921. The new Continental League made an attempt to get the Chicago American Giants to join their circuit. A guy by the name of George M. Riley sent Foster a letter encouraging him to join up as they were hoping to invade Chicago. Okay, in the letter, Riley informed Foster that the Boston Tigers and the Knoxville, that was Boston, Massachusetts, and the Knoxville Giants had already agreed to being league members. Of course, I did see a note that Hilldale had not agreed. Hilldale was out of Darby, Pennsylvania, and right in the Philadelphia area. So I take that to mean that, okay, now the Negro National League has started in 1920, okay? So I take this venture by this new Continental League to mean that, let's see, how can I put it here? That they were paying little attention to the success of the new Negro National League. It was 1 year old and just finishing the 1920 season. And they had paid out the equivalent of $150,000 in salaries to players. So that was big time. And also the league attendance had totaled 616,000. So they were over 500,000 in attendance. And this new guy comes in and he's going to try to steal some of these teams. And he contacts the wrong guy, Rube Foster. Rube Foster is not about to make a budge. He has 3 teams that he receives extra money from who are in the Negro National League. That was the Detroit Stars, the Chicago American Giants, and the Cuban Stars. So, yeah, that letter fell on deaf ears. But you kind of wonder, what was the thinking of the president of the Continental League writing Rube Foster? So I think that many people did not have respect for that new Negro National League. Of course, it was successful and continued to be a success right up until it faced the Depression and couldn't get past the Depression. Of course, Foster passed away in 1930. However, his last year was 1926 because he suffered from a mental illness and had to be institutionalized over at Kankakee, Illinois. And I've talked about that on some of my broadcasts before. So that's Andrew Rube Foster and the Continental League, who was trying to pay no attention to the Negro National League. Shame on them. Of course, the Continental League was started by a guy by the name of Lawson. I write about that in my book, A Harvest on Freedom's Fields. Andrew Rube Foster, that book came out a number of years ago, and I go into detail. Lawson had tried to organize several times in putting a Negro League together, right? And he was not an African American, by the way. All right, so let's go to another fact here. January 24th, 1923. And guys, if anybody's joining me and you want to participate, let me know where you're joining from, okay? January 24th, 1923, Frank Watson, manager of the Searcy, Arkansas Yellow Jackets, He fell from fame, fell from grace, and he was back in the limelight. Now, he had a great team, and his team had been in the limelight all summer because they had not lost a home game at the local park in Searcy there. Uh, so he was back in the news because local officials, the police, raided his house, and they found a 2.5 gallons of corn whiskey. Now, you know, in 1923, we're right in the Prohibition era, and so you're not supposed to have any kind of alcohol around. I don't know if he was selling it or if he had it consuming for himself or if he had a business. I don't know what he was doing, but anyway, the quickest way for an African American to make any kind of news back then was to break the law. You can be doing all kind of great things, but if you did something that broke the law, man, I tell you, they might put you on the sports page. So anyway, that was a guy by the name of Frank Watson, manager of the Yellow Jackets, but they were called the Arkansas Yellow Jackets out of Searcy, Sarcy, Arkansas. Okay, and let's go to another fact. I'm gonna give you another one here. This one is January 24th, 1953. First baseman Ben Taylor died in Baltimore, Maryland. Of course, Ben Taylor is a member of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame right now in Cooperstown, New York. And Taylor played, he played baseball for many Negro League teams. And actually, he came up from Birmingham with his brother, C.I. Taylor, and Johnny Stillorn Taylor. And he had another brother, Jim Candy Taylor. And they had 4 brothers that played in the Negro Leagues. And they were from Alabama. I see Bob has joined, and he said, hey, three in a row. Bob says he's called me 3 live in a row. That's pretty good, Bob, because I don't know when I'm going to come on. But I will tell you, I plan on coming back on again today. So if anybody's here enjoying these broadcasts, be sure and subscribe. I'm always trying to pick up subscribers. So I was just talking about Jim Taylor passing away and mentioning his 3 brothers. And they had some great nicknames. Ben actually didn't have a nickname. C.I., he just went by his initials. And you know, during this period, I noticed a lot of African Americans, especially pastors, they would go by that initial. So they'd be A.T. or C. In the case of C.I. Taylor, C.I. Taylor. His real name was Charles, but they would use those initials, and it was a prestige kind of thing in the African American community. So you see a lot of people's names would just be initials. Yeah, and that's a history that you have to understand African American culture to understand that. So if you look back and follow history like I do, you will see a lot of initials. So C.I. Taylor, he passed away, I believe it was 1922, and he was one of the older brothers, and of course he was a solid AME parishioner, and his funeral was at the AME church in Indianapolis, Indiana. Yeah, so, and he always had a rivalry with Andrew Root Foster, who was he was a Methodist, but he was a United Methodist, and so they will always have a great rival, and so you had the AME parishioner against the United Methodist guy. And you know, a lot of times when we talk about the Negro Leagues, not enough is talked about when it comes to mentioning the churches that they went to. And I always like to correct that. And then another thing is not a lot is mentioned about their marriages. Many of these men were married for 50 years, and it's just not being talked about. And this is the side of African American culture that people need to know about. And so I try to bring that history as often as I can. Of course, C.I. Taylor was married at the time of his passing, and his wife took over the team, and she became the first female owner of the Negro League team when she acquired the franchise from her brother, all right? And so that was Ben Taylor, and Ben Taylor, of course, managed many teams. And of course, but the greatest manager in that family is not Ben. It was actually it was Jim Candy Taylor. And to my recollection, Jim should be in the Hall of Fame. To me, I thought Jim should have been in the Hall of Fame before Ben. But I'm glad Ben's there. But I wish that Jim would also join him someday in Cooperstown. And guys, this is the kind of work that I am trying to do to get these guys recognition, because somebody needs to talk about these men, because they truly played the game for the love of it. And these guys were not making the money, but they stayed in that game and they elevated it for a whole generation, right? So if anybody's joining here, by all means, let me know where you're joining from. And so anyway, appreciate that. Sometimes I have to remove people. So, all right. So anyway, we have one more that I want to talk about. And this was something happened on January 24th, 1958. I'm looking at this one, guys. I was 2 years old when this happened. And this is always interesting history to me. So William Bill Perkins, and he was the great catcher for the Homestead Grays, Pittsburgh Crawfords especially, played for the Birmingham Black Barons. A lot of things coming out of Birmingham today in my broadcast. But he died from a heart attack, and down in Birmingham, Alabama, where he actually became his adopted home. He was originally born in Dawson, Georgia. And he had gone to war during the World War II conflict. And after he got out of the war in 1947, his health was bad, and he never returned to his former self. And he passed away about 10 years later down in Birmingham. And he was survived by his wife, Jessie, and a son, William Perkins Jr., okay? And in his prime, Perkins was considered one of the all-time greats catcher. And how about this? He was catcher on the Pittsburgh Crawfords, and he was a better catcher than Josh Gibson. But no one could hit like Josh Gibson, so guess who's going to start that game? Yeah, he's going to start that, and Bill became a reserve, and they put him in the outfield. However, whenever Satchel Paige pitched, he was almost like Satchel Paige's personal catcher. And Bill used to have a chest protector that he wore, and he had written on his chest protector, "Thou shalt not steal." So that was Bill Perkins. And I don't know if you remember him, but if you get my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, I have a wonderful picture of Bill in that book. And it's in just regular street attire. I think I got that picture. I'm not sure. I'm trying to recollect, but I think from Cool Papa Bill. And I'm just trying to think about that. And then, of course, I learned about Perkins in detail from James Cool Papa Bill, who also told me that Perkins' wife ran a restaurant in Birmingham. So Birmingham is an interesting city. And, of course, Perkins is buried in Birmingham. So, guys, these are just a few facts. This is a short broadcast because I'm going to come back again. So, Bob, you might be able to catch me 4 times in a row. That would be a miracle. 4 lives. And if anybody has any questions when I come back, let me know. And so anyway, once again, we just talked about a few people today. Who we talked about? We talked about Ruth Foster and the guy trying to recruit him and his team, the Chicago American Giants. Frank Watson, down in Searcy, Arkansas. First baseman Ben Taylor, we talked about him and his three other brothers, Candy Jim, Stillorm. Stillorm passed away, if I'm correct, in Peoria, Illinois. I spoke in Peoria before. Interesting city. When you pull into that city, almost it's like a factory city. And you pull in there, it's completely different than some places I went. But I definitely spoke in Peoria. And if you remember the great Richard Pryor, I think he was from Peoria too. So let's see. And then, of course, we ended with Bill Perkins and a little bit of history on Birmingham and "Thou shalt not steal." That's a good one, boy. So I guess he couldn't get all the 10 commandments on his chest protector, but he got that one important one that's related to baseball: "Thou shalt not steal." So anyway, guys, that concludes this particular segment. We're going to call this the January 24th segment A. And I'll get back this afternoon with some more facts, and I do have some more related to African-American baseball history that occurred on this date, which is January 24th through the ages. And, of course, this is my January the 24th, 2026 edition. And somebody says, what do they say? 7 pictures of Bill Perkins in your book. 7, wow, that's a lot. So Bob is really quick on the draw. He will pick up my book and But Bob, I don't know if you have this book here, and I don't know if you have this book. This is Wilbur Bullet Rogan and the Kansas City Monarchs. Came out a few years ago. So I'm going to tell one story on Bill Perkins. In 1934, the Kansas City Monarchs went to the Denver Post tournament, the same year that the House of David had gone to the tournament as well. And Grover Cleveland Alexander and his team have been playing the Monarchs in exhibition games all over the country. And so the big tournament came along, and the prize, if you win the tournament, was going to be a check for $5,000. And that's a big money in 1934 during the Depression. And that's for like a week's worth of work, right? So you walk away with $5,000. So anyway, Grover Cleveland knew that he would have a tough time beating the Kansas City Monarchs. So what he did was monumental. This is before Branch Rickey and all of that. Grover Cleveland Alexander, you probably heard of him before, a Hall of Famer. He integrated his team so he could beat the Kansas City Monarchs. And he said, I need two people. He said, give me that pitcher by the name of Leroy Satchel Paige. So he recognized that Leroy Satchel Paige was a great pitcher. He said, I need him. He said, and I need somebody to catch him. Bring his catcher along, Bill Perkins. So Bill Perkins and Satchel Paige went out. They played the Kansas City Monarchs. The House of David ended up winning the tournament. The Monarchs lost 2 games in the tournament, both of them to the House of David. Satchel Paige pitched one of those games, and Bill Perkins picked up a check. Satchel Paige picks up a check, and Grover Cleveland Alexander goes down in history as one of the first people to integrate his team in a major tournament. That's Grover Cleveland Alexander. All right, guys, so that does it for me. Hey, I can give you all kinds of stories. And those games, by the way, were played at Merchants Park in Denver, Colorado. I've spoken in Denver, Colorado quite a few times. And if you're ever in Denver, guys, and you want to visit a great sports store, go to Bill's Collectibles. I met Bill back in 1977. We were both like 2021, and Bill has the most successful sports collectibles store in Colorado, and it's in Denver, not too far from the Rockies Park. So go visit Bill, and if you get in there, or if you just call him, man, this guy has great items, lots of baseball cards. And so if you call him or go see him, tell him Phil Dixon said hello. All right. So that kind of does it for me. I've got one more thing I'll answer for Bob. He said, okay, he doesn't have the book, but I've read a little from it. So there's a copy at the Whittier College baseball studies. Yes, I spoke there. The picture of Bill Perkins you mentioned on page 122 in your photographic history. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And that photograph was originally had something on the back that was signed to Cool Papa Bill. I'm almost sure that's what it was, and it kind of bled through the photograph, but you can't read it, but that's what it was. So, okay, I will see you this afternoon. If I can get back, I'm going to really try that because I have a few more things. And I'm at 18 minutes, and so I like to get out of here by 20 minutes. So, guys, if you like what I'm doing here, by all means, subscribe. And just know I love my followers who will come on and support me and who've been supporting me for over 42 years through all my books and presentations and travels. Okay? Have a nice day, and I'll see you real soon. You take it easy. Bye.